Let's go to taking stock of what Biden has actually done. And I really tried. I went deep trying to track down literally everything that they've done. I had to cull it down because we've got a lot, and I'm not gonna read all of these, but studies and acknowledgments and interdisciplinary departments working together to investigate the blah, blah, blah. I'm leaving that stuff out. It's theoretically important, but there are some initial things that he did that are pretty significant, like rejoining the Paris Agreement. Significant, but also let's never forget the easiest thing ever for him to have done. Literally any Democrat that we elected would have rejoined Paris. So credit, but not too much credit there. Identifying steps to double renewable energy production from offshore wind by 2030. Making sure that eventually the federal government is going to have effectively a zero emission fleet of vehicles. Ordering agencies to ensure jobs from climate funds have prevailing wage and choice to join a union. Very glad to see that there. That's something that we saw earlier this week in both Cori Bush and AOC's Green New Deals for cities and for public housing as well. Directing agencies to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies. But that's a very limited form of that. That's not what it might sound like. That's not legislatively taking out of future budgets all of the federal subsidies. That's sort of in some of the contracts inside of the federal government. It's still a start though. And there's a variety of things like that. Again, I'm not gonna go through all of it. The thing that I noticed in my research though was that there's a couple things here that might have been somewhat politically difficult, and we'll go to those. A lot of it is the fairly easy stuff. A lot of it is establishing studies, looking into things, stuff that's not, if it's gonna pay off, it's not gonna pay off for literally months, if not years. So I feel like we should take that into account as we're evaluating his climate and environment legacy after the first few months.
Yes, and now let me talk about the infrastructure bill that we touched on earlier in the show because it's related to all of this. So the progressives were smitten with Joe Biden and still are in Washington. Not you guys, not the rest of the country, but the ones in Washington are like, oh my God, we've got access to him, we've got access. But to be fair to them, there was one other thing that they were genuinely excited about, and rightfully so, which is the infrastructure bill. Because it was large, it should have been larger, AOC is right about that, but Biden starts at 2.2 trillion, but I know Biden, he's gonna come and bring it down, right? But at least he started at 2.2 trillion, and he had a lot of things about retooling the infrastructure for green energy. And that was part of the whole point of the Green New Deal. So that's what folks were excited about. I'm telling you now, ain't gonna happen, okay? They're gonna strip out most of it. If Chris Coons, Biden's top ally in the Senate, is talking about 800 billion, that's 0.8 trillion as opposed to 2.2 trillion. And the Republicans are saying hell no to anything involving green energy. Most of it's gonna be gone.
Right.
And then what's gonna be left? And then how are they gonna do all this stuff if they don't put it in the infrastructure bill? You think a Green New Deal is gonna pass? A bill by itself, Green New Deal? Of course not, right? So then how the hell is he gonna do all this?
That's part of the reason why I have so much difficulty talking about proposals coming from the Democratic Party, proposals coming from the Biden administration, because there's a massive first step that they seem unwilling to address. And that massive first step is changing the way the Senate works structurally, getting rid of the legislative filibuster. Unless you do that, I'm just keeping it real with you guys. These proposals are just like pipe dreams. They're all unicorns and butterflies. Unless Biden is going to really flex his power and cite climate change as a national security threat and use whatever unilateral power he can to actually implement the policies we need. But is he willing to do that? I would argue, based on what he's done recently, no, he's not willing to do that. He's very hesitant and resistant to using executive authority.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm so curious what's gonna happen in the next year and a half.
Oh God.
Because if I'm right, and as always, I mean, I feel like I've been saying this for 20 straight years to you guys. I hope to God I'm wrong, right? But if I'm right, this is the high watermark of his presidency. Like, he got the COVID relief bill passed. Of course, he stripped out the most progressive parts of it. But it felt like, well, maybe we'll do them later. That's what the progressive legislators were told. And then he introduces this big infrastructure bill that's got partly Green New Deal in it. And now he has released this really ambitious plan, especially for a corporate Democrat, moderate Democrat, whatever you want to call it, for tackling the environment. This is, if I'm right, this is as good as it's going to get. It's all downhill from here. Because do I think Biden has the strength to break Manchin and Sinema, get rid of the filibuster, to pass infrastructure close to its entirety? No chance, right? To pass HR 1 in its entirety, including the anti-corruption provisions, almost no chance. Although that one has the best chance because it affects Democratic electoral outcomes so much. $15 minimum wage, almost no chance. You just go down the list. How's he gonna beat anybody if he's not willing to fight? And he just ain't willing to fight. And then once the progressives in Congress lay down, well, it really is the Manchin presidency. So Joe Biden is promising all these wonderful things, but you got to go check with the actual president. That's Manchin.
Well, look, if Biden liked the idea that for a day and a half people were talking about him being FDR 2.0, I feel like at some point you have to do something more than the COVID bill, because the high watermark that you were talking about, 2 of those 3 things they haven't passed.
Right.
They passed the COVID bill, which should be the easiest bill imaginable. And that was in a particularly bad part of the pandemic at that time. Yeah, it is frustrating. The Coons thing, the Republicans came out with their first counter proposal on the infrastructure bill. It was I think 600 billion.
Such a
Coons
joke.
is way closer to them than to Biden. Come on, Biden, talk to him. You're supposed to be the president. You're gonna let him set the stage for negotiations in that way?
I've read, just real quick, I read hundreds of articles on all of these bills. The only 2 people who have ever mentioned that Coons actually represents Biden in the Senate are me and Ryan Grimm. Where is there any other reporters in the country? You don't know that Coons is Biden's top ally? That when Coons says something, that very likely means that's what Biden actually thinks? You're a national media reporter and you don't know that? That's embarrassing.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to a little bit more of what Biden has done. We're gonna get into a bit of canceling some of what was done under Trump. Great that, with the future of our civilization at stake, we have to spend so much time and effort just trying to get back to the Obama standard. But anyway, he almost instantly directed agencies to review and reverse more than 100 Trump actions on climate and environment, which is a good chunk of them, but there were far more than that. We talked about that multiple times on the network. And again, directing them to review and reverse is not the same thing as instantaneously via executive order reversing them, so just bear that in mind. Directing all executive departments and agencies to immediately review the rollbacks of climate and environmental regulations during the Trump era. A lot of that gets into trying to get the EPA back on its original mission. But we're gonna talk about some of the reasons inside of federal bureaucracy that's gonna be difficult to do a little bit later on. Canceling the permit for the Keystone XL oil pipeline. That's good, that's good. We can give him something for that.
That's pretty much, out of the list that you just read, that's the only substantive thing. Please don't come to me with your commissions. Oh, we're gonna study that. What? Study what? Study what?
We're still studying?
Please stop wasting our time with, I am going to demand a commission look into this. Just don't insult us,
There's
please.
some chance that the commission will catch on fire before it figures out what the problem is. Right?
Perhaps, or wash away.
Yeah.
Okay, a few other good things in a variety of different areas of the environment. Reducing methane emissions in the oil and gas sector, which is good. Although again, that's largely, that's getting us back to Obama. Obama did some of that in the last couple of years of his administration. It was just fully rescinded by Trump. Establishing fuel economy standards for vehicles. Again, that's getting us back to Obama. Revising appliance and building efficiency standards, which I get hearing that's not the sexiest thing, but it's actually fairly significant in terms of total energy outlay. National emission standards for hazardous air pollutants from coal and oil fired electric utility steam generating units, which is important both for limiting emissions and pollutants, but also, keeping it real, them having to implement these sorts of things to clean up their incredibly dirty energy also provides an economic benefit to some forms of renewable energy generation, which are already doing very well in comparison to coal. It's been one of the great environmental sort of changes in the past few years is that it is in some areas and at certain times of year already cheaper to generate renewable energy, at least to some extent.
Can I just say, a couple of our viewers had already said what we said about commissions before we said it. So I want to give them credit. Snowdrop in our member section said, I hope we don't end up with more studies that drag on for years and lead to no action. We can't afford to go that route again. Again, I just can't, what do we study? I mean, we already know everything. In fact, then I go to Dragon Penny on Twitch, and they say, I knew a physicist who was a science advisor of President Clinton. He had been screaming about climate change since the 1980s.
Yep.
Right, we already studied it 40 years ago.
I mean, and also, don't be fooled into thinking that a president ordering a commission to study something means that they're taking the situation seriously and they want to act immediately. I mean, Richard Nixon tapped Schaefer to do the Schaefer report on marijuana and whether or not it would harm public safety. Once he didn't like the results of that study, he just ripped it up and ignored it. And of course, the study said that it was not a substantive harm to the public safety. So commission, that's not really action. And so I agree with the members there.
Yeah, Andrew Cuomo did a commission on corruption. And when they were about to conclude that he was corrupt, he just ended it. And he said, I don't want your stinking report.
I don't like that.
Yeah, me no like that. And so then he just ended the commission, and all the reporters were like, okay. And all the Democrats are like, okay.
Well, the study would have helped people to understand government corruption, but that act, I think, really made it real. It's like a show don't tell sort of thing.
Yeah,
Anyway.
Except if you don't pay any attention to it through the media, nobody ever finds out. Nobody ever found, everybody's talking about the sexual harassment charges as they should against Andrew Cuomo. Almost no person in New York, real people, know that he commissioned a commission on corruption and then ended it because they were going to conclude he was corrupt.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.